Hello, welcome to the ARCHICAD 20 upgrade training session. Today we'll go through all the new features for ARCHICAD 20. Before we start with the new features, a few things that we want to clarify. This file will be available on our website, mycadimage.com. All the files necessary to run this training sessions will be available there. There will also be a recording of this webinar available there, a PDF file with the training material, and even a BIMX file that you can download as well. So now to start with ARCHICAD 20, just to introduce this version, something that we wanted to explain is this the flagship project of ARCHICAD 20 is this one that you can see on the screen, is the Lenlai Center from Patterson's. The Lenlai Center is this art gallery in New Zealand. For the first time in 30 years of ARCHICAD, a New Zealand project has been made the flagship project. We're very proud of that. Hopefully it won't take another 30 years to have another New Zealand building in the cover. But we're very happy about that. So now to start with ARCHICAD 20, the first thing we can notice is the changes in the user interface. So let's just go and start having a quick look through the new features in the ARCHICAD 20 new user interface. For those who have installed it already, is that the biggest change has been the release of the redesign of the user interface. And this screenshot in this slide that I show you at the moment, this very pixelated image, belongs to icons of actually ARCHICAD 19, the previous version. As you see, the image is quite blurry, and you can say that the icons are pixelated. So amongst many of the things that needed to be improved with the user interface were the icons. So rather than me talking about ARCHICAD 20 in the new user interface, I just want to show you very quickly this video. Okay, so this is just an introduction video that shows the evolution of ARCHICAD through the years. So starting from the very beginning, and we could go to this user interface that at the moment looks like ARCHICAD 19 in a Mac computer. So changes we've done to the ARCHICAD, changes in the navigator, and changes in the way it looks. All the icons have been reworked, they've been redesigned. So you know, if you have one of the latest operating systems for Windows or Mac, you know that their design is very simple and it's very smart. So that's what ARCHICAD was trying to achieve with this new look for ARCHICAD 20. They wanted ARCHICAD to make sense in your new operating systems, since if you compare ARCHICAD 19 with the latest operating systems for Microsoft or Apple, they started to look not really up to date. One of the coolest thing is that the grid is turned off in the new user interface. You can still turn that on, but so far we've had really good feedback from people, very happy that the grid have been turned off as a default. So just to finish with this video, ARCHICAD 20 supports a Mac 5K resolution Retina display. So if you have one of those fancy computers, now you can have full resolution of ARCHICAD. But let's go back to the training session. So I'm going to start. I'm going to continue with this training session, but not before mentioning that after after the training session finishes today, you will later get an email with a link so you can have access to the recording of this video, and you can also have access to the training files. So the training files is an ARCHICAD file that will go through different views. So rather than showing you now everything about the user interface step by step, I'm just going to go through the basic ideas of this new user interface. One of the first things that um, um, we want to show, okay, so this is ARCHICAD 19. This is the old user interface. If I show you now the ARCHICAD 20, the ARCHICAD 20 new user interface, that we can go through the different icons that were recreated for ARCHICAD 20. So this is the look of the icons for ARCHICAD 20. So they are now ready for 5K resolution Retina display. See, if we show you the evolution of this icon, so this was the original icon for selection, and it just goes through the different iterations, and it finishes with this new icon. So it's blue and black, the new icons, and this is one of the changes that we also have is that the font, the default font using for ARCHICAD have been unified. So if you're in Windows or if you're in Mac, they have more unified look. We're going to start now with actually applying the ARCHICAD standard profile. So for those who are not aware, remember, we go to the menu Options, Work Environment, Apply Profile, and this is when we apply the standard profile 20. Okay, so what we have at the moment is actually ARCHICAD 20. So for those who decide to download the training file, just a few quick instructions. If you decide to download the training file, that it's going to have a reference for all sorts of many things we won't have time to talk in this webinar. You can use this as a reference. So you go to the navigator, you go to the view map, and then you're going to see we have different folders. So we have the introduction folder, the innovation folder is the UI, and we go through all these different folders to learn about the new features. Okay, so they are in chronological order, so we can use that as a reference. But I'm just going to make this easier. So what I wanted to show you now is actual changes in the new user interface. One of the changes that I wanted to show you is that this icons to open a file, close a file, print, copy, paste, these icons are gone from the user interface. If you see here at the top, in my ARCHICAD, I don't have those icons anymore. Graphical was trying to achieve bigger icons, so this bigger icons require to get rid of some other icons. So now if you want to open a file, if you want to close a file, if you want to save a file, you know that the shortcut key is Control S if you're in Windows, Command S if you're in Mac, and you can always go to the menu File Save or File Open or Edit Copy if you want to achieve those options. So this option here is gone. As you can see here in the toolbox in ARCHICAD 20 has been redesigned. Another thing that changed, we used to have the quick options palette here in the corner. So this is actually ARCHICAD 20, and you can see here that um, that the quick options palette is gone. Why? Because now we have here at the bottom of the screen, we have this quick options bar that will pretty much replace the quick options palette we used to have in here. Okay, so other things that change, we don't have the navigator shortcut in the corner like we used to have. Now there's this buttons to preview zoom, to next zoom, to increase zoom, or to fit in window. We're going to see different ways to opening the navigator, but for now what you want to know is that this icon and this icon to open the quick options palette is not longer there. Now that we have applied the standard profile, and just to finish with the user interface, there's a few things that I wanted to show you. So first of all, the toolbox. The toolbox, if you see here in my screen, the toolbox shows a list of two columns with icons. This is what the column would have looked like in ARCHICAD 19. It would be an icon and the text. So this is how the standard work environment has been set up, just to make it easier for all the icons to be displayed in your screen. At the moment, well, what you're looking at, I'm doing this webinar in a 24-inch screen, so it's quite a big screen. But the smallest your screen is, sometimes it becomes difficult to see all the icons in your toolbox. So we wanted the toolbox to make it easy to see all the icons in your screen, even if you have a small screen. So just a note, if you want to see the name of the tools, you just have to hover the cursor over the tools, or you can resize the quick options, the toolbox, and the toolbox can show again the icons. Then I try to resize it back again, and now I see two columns with icons. So let's actually get started with the specific changes for the new user interface. Possibly I'm talking too much about how pretty it looks and what were the changes in the background, but important changes now. When I have this, this is actually an elevation, okay, and this training file that you will be able to download from the link we'll send later today. This training file in ARCHICAD has all the instructions of the things we're going to be doing through this whole training session. So the first thing we wanted to show you here is that with this elevation marker we can open another elevation in a different tab, okay, and I can open the other tab and they are in the same tab here at the bottom. But I also have this option to open an elevation in a new tab, so I can have two different elevation in new tabs, so they don't have to be opening in the same one. The next thing that I wanted to use as an example here is what happens in ARCHICAD 19 when we go from one tab to the other. And if you remember, the tabs used to inherit the settings from a different tab. So if I'm here, just to make a very obvious change, I'm going to change my model view option to number 5, ceiling plans. This model view option changes the display of doors and windows to be turned off. Okay, so if it's turned off, and if I go now to my elevation and I click just once, what happens? Nothing happens. Why? Because the elevations don't, and not just the elevations but any views, when you go from one tab to the other with one single click, they don't inherit the settings anymore. It doesn't matter if you click once or if you click twice, they won't inherit the settings. So that's pretty cool, since we had a lot of feedback last year. People wanted the tool to work in a different way. So for those who actually like the fact that it used to inherit the settings, you just have to right click your tab and you can use the option Get Last Settings. If I go to Get Last Settings, you see here this elevation inherits the settings of the other one. So that's fine. I mean, this is far from being ideal. We don't want the ceiling plant model view option to override our elevation, but we just want to make a very obvious change here. So let's change this elevation to a right model view option, that is number 10, elevations. And now that is correct, now the question is, how can we fix the other elevation that has the wrong model view options? Well, this is another new feature of ARCHICAD 20. Now we can right click and use pick up view settings, and we can go to the other view, we can right click and we can inject the view settings. So you see that now that I injected the view settings, the model view option here has changed to number 10, elevations. This can potentially change, improve, and optimize your workflow in ARCHICAD. So just keep in mind these little things, because they can make it easier, a lot easier for you to save views and to change settings of views before you actually save them. Okay. Just to continue with the new user interface, another change here is the info box. The info box here at the top shows the names of the tools. The info box doesn't show as a default the scrolling bar. If I resize my info box a little bit, the scrolling bar is back. But if I resize it back to the original size, the scrolling bar is not there, but you can still scroll from one side to the other. Okay. Okay. Another important change is how you can save views with ARCHICAD 20. Another thing that people were very excited last year when we released this new tool. Last year we called this icon here we call this the mini navigator. Now this has been renamed to be the pop-up navigator, and just to make it easier for us to explain how it works in this version, I will actually close the real navigator and I will be using the mini navigator instead. So when I'm using this mini navigator instead, this is what I want to show you. Now you can save views from your pop-up navigator. If you go to the pop-up, if you go to the view map, if you have a folder there, a subset folder, you can right click and there's the option to save the current view. So it comes up with the dialog box asking you how you want to save this view. This is something you are familiar with. So that's a way for you to save views from your pop-up navigator without having to open the actual navigator. This is possibly not very relevant in my case because I'm working today with a quite big screen, and I can have the luxury of having my navigator open. But just think, if you're working in a computer with a small screen and you don't want this navigator to be using 15 or 20% of your screen. If that's the case, you just use the pop-up navigator and you have a lot more workable space. Actually, if you want to optimize the use of the screen, you can always resize the quick options bar, the info box, and you can resize as well your toolbox. So now you have a lot more workable space. So just keep those things in mind now that we're talking about the user interface. It's always just good to remind you about those little things. Now I show you this option to save the current view. Another thing that I really wanted to show you is that now we have the option to save views from tabs. If I show you this, this is my original elevation, and this is the elevation that I open from a marker. Okay, what's the difference here? The difference is that the elevation I open from the view map shows this icon as blue, and this one is black. So now the question is, what's the difference between the blue icon and the black icon? It's easy. It's very easy. So if we have this open here, let me just show you. Any views coming from the view map will be displayed in this blue color. Any elements coming from the project map will show with this black icon. Okay, so when you open a file and you see lots of tabs open, and if you want to understand whether if it's already a view in your view map or not, easy to understand now with the difference of color, black or blue. Blue view in the view map, black view coming from the project map, not quite saved yet. Okay, so the next one is, how do we deal with saving views? So this one is not in my view map yet. If I right click the tab, now I have the option to save this view. If I try to save this view, it comes up with the dialog box, save the view. So that's another thing that will change a lot the way you work with ARCHICAD. Just keep in mind you can save views from the tabs. And the other thing is, what happens with this elevation that is already in my view map? Is actually in here in my view map. What happens if I go and try to save the view? If I try to save the view, I get this dialog box, save as view. Save as view, it means that I will be saving a new additional view, additional to the one that I have already in my view map. So in this case, it would make sense that you would be saving it possibly with a different scale, or maybe a different layer combination, or a different model view option, but that would be a different view. So something to clarify as well, what happens if I change this view? What happens if I just zoom out? If I zoom out, the original zoom is not there anymore. So the tab will show this exclamation mark in here. This exclamation mark here means, okay, this is a view from your view map, but it's not showing the correct settings. You know now that if you double click this, it will go back to the original, but if I zoom out back again, the exclamation mark is there. Now the next question, what happens if I try to save this view? If I try to save it now, I actually have two options this time. Now I have save view and save as view. What's the difference? If you use save view, it will be pretty much like redefining the original view. Redefining, you are not saving a new one, you are just redefining the original. Just keep that in mind. But if you didn't want to redefine it, you can always go to this option, save as view, and it will come up again with this dialog box, which means that you will be saving an additional view. Okay, I'm gonna open I'm actually going to go now to my Cadimage work environment. So something we wanted to show you. So for those who have been working with the Cadimage tools in the last 9 months, you are aware that the Cadimage work environment now is installed from the Cadimage installer. This Cadimage installer has proven to be very, very successful. We released it 3 years ago for ARCHICAD 18. And now you know, with this single application you have installed already in your machine, you can install the Cadimage tools for ARCHICAD 18, 19, and 20. If there's updates, they're going to be there available in the updates dialog box. And the most important that I wanted to mention is that the work environment now is included here. So you don't have to go to our website and download a separate installer to get the Cadimage work environment. So I'm going to go and actually apply that Cadimage work environment according to the settings here. So when I apply the Cadimage work environment, what's the difference? The biggest difference between the Cadimage work environment and the standard work environment is that the more option under the toolbox has been deleted. So all the icons that used to be under more have been moved to the menu design or to the menu document in your toolbox, like the lamp tool that used to be under more, now it's under design, or the camera tool that used to be here, it's now just there. So what's the point now? The point is now we have all these extra Cadimage tools here in our toolbox. We have polish there, or we have railing, or we have cabinets, and the thing that we wanted to make sure is that it was possible that all the icons were visible in the toolbox, so you didn't have to expand or collapse any of the menus like you used to do in previous versions. Okay, so that's it with the new user interface with ARCHICAD 20. Now let's talk about migration. Okay, this time I'm not going to spend too much time in the migration part of this. If you want to have a reference, if you're migrating your files from a very old version of ARCHICAD, please always remember that we have on our website mycadimage.com available for you to download the documentation and to watch the videos for the old upgrade training webinars. So we won't try to repeat anything that we've said before in older upgrade training sessions. So just especially if you're in older versions like 15 or 14, it's definitely necessary for you to go through that documentation. But for now, let's talk about the migration, especially migration between ARCHICAD 19, the previous version, or even ARCHICAD 18 to version 20. So when you open an old file, you know you're going to get this dialog box asking you to migrate the ARCHICAD library parts. So the library parts between 18, 19, and 20 are very compatible with these three versions. So if you started the project with ARCHICAD 18 standard libraries or 19 standard libraries, it's very unlikely you will have to make any changes to your library parts or replace anything. So the same thing doesn't apply to your custom libraries. Just if you have your own custom library parts, they will always depend on many other factors to be migrated to newer versions. Okay, but if we talk about the standard ones, that's all good. Changes in ARCHICAD 20, the library manager has changed. It looks better, it looks prettier. Now we can see the location of libraries. If we have multiple libraries and they are all in different locations, they're going to be shown here. Now you can see the size of the libraries that you have loaded. And if you want to add a library, we used to have a big button here at the top to add. Now we have the button just here. Okay. If I go, there's this new tab in the library manager. This tab is not called the embedded library, or is not called a specific name. This is the content of your library. So if I double click my ARCHICAD library 20, this changes to ARCHICAD library 20. If I click my embedded library, it goes to embedded library, and I can choose any of the loaded libraries in the project and see what's inside those libraries. So things that we used to ask you especially from the support point of view. If we used to ask you, do you have this library loaded? What is the content of this library? Now you can find most of that information with within this dialog box. You can see what's loaded in your ARCHICAD file, and you can display that with different sizes: list, medium, and large icons. But we have a problem here. We have a warning message saying that we have a missing attribute. So if we have a missing attribute, it's easy now to add new files to selected folders with this management library dialog box. So if I click here to import, it comes with a dialog box. If I want to check what's the problem, I select the missing attribute, and I have a missing surface called cardboard. So if I go and add libraries, I'm just going to go to this folder. This folder is one of the folders that will be available for you to download if you want to follow the steps. So I load this cardboard library part that I have missing as an attribute. I reload my libraries, and after they reload, it should be all good. So now, no warning messages. I have sorted my library parts. Just to finish with this part of the migration instructions here is the differences between the new features. In the next couple of hours, I'll talk about graphic override and property manager. So far, if the question, what happens with migration of files? If you migrate from 19 or even from ARCHICAD 13 to ARCHICAD 20, you won't be affected by the new features, graphic override or property manager. We'll clarify that later on, but for now, that's what we want to clarify. Okay, so that's all with the migration of projects. Remember, if you have a very old file from ARCHICAD 15 or 14 or 16, and if you want to bring it to 20, it's always a good idea to make a gradual migration. Try to migrate your file first to ARCHICAD 18 or 17, and then try to migrate it to 19 or 20 before you try to make a direct migration between a very, very old version and the newest version. Okay, that will make it more likely that you will have a very organized way to sort your library parts. In ARCHICAD 20, there hasn't been any major changes that will affect migration, but you know that we have major changes between ARCHICAD 16 and ARCHICAD 16 and 17. So that's when the migration can get tricky. So again, go to our website mycadimage.com to find some of those upgrade training materials if you have to migrate all files. Now we're going to talk about the biggest improvement to features in ARCHICAD 20, and that's favorites. Favorites, for those who are not aware of it, used to be an option to save the preferred settings in ARCHICAD. So far, we've been trying to find out how many people were using favorite in New Zealand. And in the previous upgrade training sessions, we have found that there was a lot of people not using favorites. So this version of ARCHICAD 20 should convince you to start using favorites. So if the question is how do we deal with favorite, or what's the reason to have favorite for those who are not familiar with it, just a quick analogy or a quick example would be, okay, you know that the Cadimage window tool is just one library part. that library part can be customized in several different ways. You can add panels, you can change the settings, you can change all these things, but at the end of the day, if you spend 5 minutes or 15 minutes or 1 hour trying to set up a very interesting door or window, the question comes, how can I use this window again in my project, or how can I make use of the same window in a different project without having to go through all the same steps all over again. I don't want to spend those 10 minutes or 20 minutes again. So if that is the case, we used to save favorites. But there was a few reasons why a lot of people weren't using them, and I will explain those things. So that's what we do. That's what we should be doing now. If you want to get across, a door or a window or an object or something that you set up in your file or in your template file, we use favorites. Okay, so just to explain this very quickly, if I click now this little drop down arrow to the right of any of the tools in the toolbox, they will show the list of favorites. So I have all the favorites here for the wall tool. If I go here to the settings, I can change them from 2D to 3D. If I just an interesting thing, if I hover the cursor over the favorite and using my keyboard the Shift key, I can change the display temporary to be from 2D to 3D or from 3D to 2D, depending on what you have. Okay, so if I go to the next one, I'm going to show you this very quickly. So a question, how do I use favorites? If this is my plan view and I select this window, again, let's say that I spent a few minutes setting up this door. If I set up this door to have a different settings here, if I actually change the attributes, let's say that I change the materials in here, change some of the materials. So how can I use this as a favorite? Well, now we have this icon here. This icon, the star, represents the favorite. When I go to the star list instead of my library list, I can see what favorites I have. But you have two options. You can create directly here the favorite, or you can create a folder. So if I create a folder and I call this custom doors, it's my custom doors folder, I go inside there, I create actually the favorite from the create new favorite button, star button here. So I'm going to call this door 2 side lights 3200 millimeters. So that's my favorite. So what's the big difference for those who haven't figured it out yet? The fact that we have a 3D display, a 3D preview of this favorite is what makes the biggest difference to start with. We didn't have this option before. We could only rely on the name of the favorite. So the problem, or the good thing, or the bad thing was, if you saved a favorite in ARCHICAD 19, you only had to rely in the name. So if I spent all this time creating this door and I gave it a very generic name, there was no way for me to find out what the favorite would have looked like before I actually applied that favorite. So that's going to be one of the biggest changes here. So other things, if you click this little ellipsis symbol, this is where you can redefine a favorite. So if I change this to be 3400 millimeter, so it changed. So if I click here in the ellipsis symbol, I can go to rename a favorite. So I'm going to rename it to 3400, and you see I clicked here already, so it changed back to the favorite. So I'm going to change it to 34. So I click here and I will go to redefine the favorite, and now this is a 3400 millimeters width door instead. You can always delete the favorite as well. So that's another new feature in this dialog box. So I say that favorite. I'm going to go to my next view. So what I'm going to do now is to select the favorite, select the door here, just a different door, and if I go to my list of favorites under the toolbox and I go to the folder that I just created, I can just double click that favorite and that is applied to the selection. If I deselect and select the wall, I can go to this list and double click and I apply the favorite. I select this window and I go here. I just try to find a window that I want to apply. I apply that one. I don't like that one. Just go and apply a different one. Okay, so let's go and select let's select the next object here. So another tip, the favorite drop-down list or the favorite list doesn't have to come just from the toolbox. You can always click the drop-down list in your info box of the selection. So in this case it's showing the favorite for objects, and in ARCHICAD 20 in the standard template file we created lots of favorites for you. We created folders. We try to organize all those favorites in folders. And it means that you can just go there and apply a favorite, or you can just go there again. I can go up one level and I can apply a different favorite to the selection. Okay, things to clarify now in ARCHICAD 20, we still have this dialog box, what we used to call the favorite palette. When I open the favorite palette, something that we wanted to show you, depending of the size of your screen, it can be a good idea to dock the favorite palette to your screen, to either to the right side or to the left side. So if I dock my favorite palette here, how can I take advantage of that? If you go to the settings button, I can change this to show only the tools filtered by the active tool. So filter to active tool only. If I check that one, okay, and if I actually change the display of icons to be medium icons, if I select the wall tool, the list shows only favorites for walls, or only favorites for doors, or only favorites for objects. You can go to the folder and it's there. So especially if you're trying to be highly efficient and if you want to save some clicks, having this favorite palette docked in your screen can make that difference. But for now, I think that the drop-down list is pretty good. So I think I personally, only if I have a big screen like this one would have the favorite palette open. But it's your choice. There's another two big reasons to have a favorite palette. The next reason is this is where we can go and check the parameters. So the parameters in, if you open the palette icons in here, you go to favorite parameters, and what we have in there is this list we've seen before. For those who are not familiar with favorite parameters, this is what we can learn or understand about the favorite parameters. All these little options here, like the window tool or the wall tool, have this checkbox. This checkbox indicates if you can exclude a setting when you apply a favorite. Okay, if I try to give you an example, actually in ARCHICAD 19, I was working in ARCHICAD 19 the other day and using that template file from version 19, and I was trying to play some objects. Okay, and this is the thing in ARCHICAD. In ARCHICAD 19, if I go to the favorite parameters under the object tool, this option, the layer is checked in version 19, and this is how it works. So let's say that I'm working in a project, let's say that I'm working on a site mesh. And if I'm working on the site mesh and placing boundaries, and after a few hours when I finish working with the site and I start working on something different, let's say that I start placing furniture. Okay, so what happens in 19 is that just because the last tool I was using before was the boundary tool, that is technically an object, the last layer option I used was site boundaries. When I try to apply the favorite, when I try to apply a favorite in version 19 from an object, even if I try to apply that favorite, the problem is that the layer would still be um, side boundary. So what we change here is I uncheck this box of layer, and I made sure that all the favorites we saved for the object tool already had assigned a layer according to the Cadimage or the New Zealand standard template. So if I go to the bathroom list, if I double click a favorite, you see here at the bottom that the favorite applies already the layer days, design, fittings, plumbing. Or if I go to appliances, I go to presentation bits. If I use something like landscape, okay, use side planting. If I go to office, it goes to the layer furniture. So we're trying to save you this extra step of selecting a layer if you already select from your list of favorites. Okay, so that's what the parameters, the favorite parameters do here, that they allowed you to apply a favorite, a part of your favorite or not. Now, saving favorite parameters, if you have this dialog box, here at the bottom to import and export favorite parameters. So if you check these boxes here, and if you want to get across the same parameters to a different file, you have this option to import and export the favorite parameters. Now we're going to go to actually saving out favorites. So if I have the favorite palette dialog box, okay, and I select many of my favorites, and I go down to this option to import or export favorites. This is what makes a difference in version 20. If I show you this in action, okay, so I go to my list, I select some favorites, and if I go to import export and I click selected, if I click selected favorite here, you see that now I can choose to export only those 14 favorites I selected. This is a huge difference with version with previous versions. You couldn't possibly select favorites to save as an independent or external file. So this is the reason why you should be starting using favorites in ARCHICAD. In ARCHICAD 20, because now you can save them from one file to the other. Something that I like to mention in this training session is, you know, we try to explain to people that the best idea is to create your favorites before you draw the first wall in your project, to create your favorites in your standard template. But the reality is that a lot of people start creating the favorites or things that you're gonna want to use a lot in your projects when you're actually working in the project, in the working file. And the problem back then is, if you were in your working file and you wanted to get across favorites, there wasn't a very practical way to do that. Now we do have that practical way of exporting selection of favorites. In this case, let's say that I already exported the selection of favorites. What I wanted to explain is the difference between this XML and PRF files. So if I just close this dialog box for a second, this is what I want to explain. So if you do have the option to save as a PRF file, you're going to get asked to save a file as a PRF. And once you save the selection of favorites as a PRF, you're going to have something like this, just one external file including all the favorites you selected. Now, if you use the option the XML files, you will be asked to choose a folder to save the favorites to. If you do that, then you will get this list of all the favorites all individually saved as XML files, which means that you could just choose from a list of favorites and import them. Okay, but there was something else that I wanted to clarify about this. If you're using the favorite palette to import favorites, let me show you this. If I try to import from an ARCHICAD project or a PRF, even if I try to import that single file with lots of favorites, you still have the option to choose what favorite you want to import. Okay, so just think of this as an option to say, okay, I can actually save my selection of favorites as a PRF file. Let's say that you save a PRF for interior walls and another PRF file for exterior walls, or another PRF with furniture favorites. So if that is the case, when you try to get across those favorites from your working file to your template file or to a different file, you still have the option to check the box of the favorites you don't want to import. And if that is the case, that makes it like a double filter. So just think of those options, PRF or XML files. They have different functions, and they both have their own strengths. So just choose what options will be easier for you. For now, in this very specific case, I already have those favorites loaded in my project, so there's no point to import them. So just click cancel. Okay. Just to finish with the favorite part of this training, something that I like to clarify is a couple of things. The first one, the favorite saved for the wall tool. The favorites saved for the wall tool, they all have this extra legend. We have this NLB and we have this LB legend in the favorites. This is because now in ARCHICAD 20 the IFC properties for the structural function for a wall or a column or a beam, they're easily assigned under the categories and properties dialog box under the settings. So if you want to choose the structural function for a wall to be load bearing or non-load bearing or not defined, you can do that easily. But what we try to make it easy for you is that all the favorites for the walls already have assigned a structural function that will be LB for load bearing or NLB for non-load bearing. In that case, later on in the next hour, we will be talking about the new feature called Graphic Override, and we will see how we can take advantage of this structural function that has been assigned already to the construction elements. Yeah, there's a very specific reason why we wanted to add that to all our wall favorites. Another thing, this is in this screenshot, I'm just showing you all the favorites that are in the out-of-the-box ARCHICAD 20 template file, favorites for the window tool. So the favorites for the window tool, they're all coming from the standard library. What we're going to do, we're going to gradually, in our website, mycadimage.com, we will gradually release other favorites that you can download and load into your template files. We are actually releasing this week, on Friday, we are releasing the newsletter. The Cadimage newsletter will have instructions so you can download and use favorites for the cabinet tool. So just keep an eye on that email you'll get on Friday. With you in this training session, now you realize how easy it is to save favorites and how easy it is to import them. So it's going to be very easy for you to import those cabinet favorites if you want to load them into your template files. And the same thing will gradually happen for the window tool and the door tool. But for now, these are the favorites we have loaded from the standard libraries for doors and windows. Okay, so now that this is all we have for favorites. With this training session, we didn't want just to repeat the same. We didn't want to repeat the same steps that the Graphical tutorial videos do on their YouTube channel. We wanted, rather than just to use a step-by-step way to use these new features, we also wanted to let you know all the different applications for this new feature. So that's why we're going to start talking about the next tool. We're going to start talking about the Property Manager. And the Property Manager is a new tool that is very closely related to the BIM functionality of ARCHICAD. The BIM, the I, stands for Information, Building Information Modeling. So with the new tool, with the Property Manager, we can actually add information to our ARCHICAD elements. If something you're going to notice straight away when you start using the ARCHICAD 20 standard template is that let's say when you go under the categories and properties, you're going to find all this information you didn't used to have. Like under categories and properties, for the wall tool, I have these properties for general rating or concrete structures or this main construction, and all these properties you didn't used to have. So now the question is how these properties got into our ARCHICAD template, and how can we take advantage of this properties tool. So first of all, how do we open the Property Manager? So we just have to go to many options, Property Manager, and it opens this this dialog box. If you open this dialog box from an existing file, from a file that was migrated from an older version, the Property Manager will be empty. So this properties loaded in our ARCHICAD file are only in the ARCHICAD standard file. Okay, so if I try to show you very quickly the things we have in the Property Manager, we have already loaded this general rating, this manufacturing, packing, and warranty. So the property is a tool that will allow you to create any kind of information and inject or make that property be part of your BIM element. Okay, one of the ways I like to explain how the Property Manager works is that it, if you're one of those people that use ARCHICAD to its full potential, creating interactive schedules. If you wanted to add information to those interactive schedules, this is the right way to do that. People really wanted ARCHICAD to work like an Excel spreadsheet and being able to add as much information as you want, or add new columns and add information to the columns, even if that's possible to a certain degree. With ARCHICAD 20, the best option is to actually use the property manager. So in this case, if I go to my list of properties, we can have this information like main construction, construction type, or technology. Now the question is, how do we create this? How do we create this property? So pretty much there's a new button here. Here at the bottom. So when I click the new button, this is where I can create a property or I can create a group. And if I show you the property manager, the training file you can download from our website, this training file in this property manager slide pretty much explains the use of the user interface of property manager. So there's the new button. With this new button, you have the option to create a group. A group is pretty much a category, and inside the group, it's when you create your properties. You can't create a property without creating a group first. So the property manager can allow you to create any kind of information, like if I go here to the first property we have in the standard template file, we have a general rating group, and the first property is combustible. So if I use this combustible here, pretty much this was created just using custom text. We created a new property with the new property button. We selected from the list general rating, and it's called combustible. So now that it was called combustible, there was the option here to choose what kind of information the property would be. Would it be general information? Would it be a number, an integer number? Would it be a fractional number? Would it be a tag list? If I wanted to create a tag list, you can go like tag 1 and go tag 2, like go tag 3, and you have a list of tags in here. So you can choose from different tags you can assign to the element. If you wanted to have an option set, you could say, okay, instead this could be an option set, and you could choose one or many options at the same time. If I go back to the option setup and I said I want to allow, or do I want to restrict the options to be just one option? So in that case, I can only choose one option. Finally, I have the true-false statement. So you can use this property tool in very different creative ways. There's one property that we created after our upgrade training sessions in Wellington earlier this year, and it was very interesting because when we showed everyone the way the tool worked, we got a lot of people asking, can I do this with the property manager? Can I achieve this with the property manager? And the most interesting of them all was, can I schedule elements in ARCHICAD according to a construction process or a date? And we said yes, you can create a property like this one we created only for this training file, and the group was called construction progress. And when we created the property was called stages, and we added the option that the property would be an option set, and this option set was set up to have 5 stages in the project. In these 5 stages, the default one would be undefined. Then this is where we go and choose what tools are going to be related, or what tools are going to have available this property. So in this case, we selected everything available to be to have this data type property, that is the stages. So what happens here, after I clicked the OK button after creating this property stages with the default being undefined, everything in my project automatically had this extra property that was set as undefined. So the next thing we just had to do was to select each element in either in your 3D model or in plan and assign one of these 5 stages. Once we created those stages, it was possible for us to create a graphic override or to create a different schedule that will only schedule the quantities of the elements that belong to the stage 1 of the project, or to the elements that belong to the stage 2. And it would be a lot easier to deal with that because we have now that option of adding that property. The problem with older versions of ARCHICAD, if you wanted to do such things, you had to use methods that weren't very practical, like changing the IDs or having different layers, which is far from ideal, creating layers to deal with this kind of problems. So this is possibly one of the most interesting ways to use the property manager to create a property that will assign a stage or a date or a week of the construction process to the elements in ARCHICAD. Okay, so what we have as an example in the ARCHICAD training file you will be able to download is, if I go to the next view, if I open the settings of the wall tool. So these are some of the settings that I've shown you already. To see that this wall doesn't have assign a property. So if I wanted to assign a stage to the wall, I could easily go to the settings and say, okay, this wall belongs to stage number 2, and then when you go to the schedule, you will find the quantities of this wall to be part of that schedule, let's say. Okay, things to consider about the properties is they are not activated as a default to be part of your BIM project if you export the file as an IFC. So if you do want to save this as an IFC, make sure you go to the IFC translation setup, you go to data settings, and you activate the element properties so they are part of your BIM project. Here in this in the training file, we have the instructions step by step how we created one of the sample properties of this file. It's called fire resistance rating. So if I give you a quick idea how we created this, again, so we pretty much created a new group, and the new group was called fire resistance rating, and that was a new group. And when I create a new group, I create a new property that will belong to that one, and the property will be called FRR, for fire resistance rating. And when the property is there, I just say what kind of information this property is going to be. So in this case, the property will have the information for the structural adequacy, the integrity, and insulation. So I said, okay, in the description, this is the information, and if that is the case, the general text would be good enough to indicate this information for each element. So I just leave as a default pretty much a blank field, just a blank field with the format that will separate the structural adequacy, the integrity, and the insulation of this new property. Okay, so I already have one set up in here, so I'm not going to save it this time, but all the instructions are here in the training file. So now that we created this property, if I go and open the settings of this wall, I can go to the settings and say, okay, the fire resistance rating from here is going to be 90 minutes for each one. So if I go to 90 and I click OK, so I have assigned already the fire resistance rating to be 90. And if you're not familiar with the way the ARCHICAD interactive schedule works, we have just here in the training file just a quick reference how we manage to add this new property into our interactive schedule. Okay, so if I go to the actual schedule here, we see that the property is already here, and the fire resistance rating of the wall I had selected is already being assigned here as 90. If I go to the settings, just like I mentioned in the screenshot, this is where we go and add the fields. We go to the properties, and whatever property you create in the project, that will be automatically part of the options you can add to your interactive schedule. So in this case, the fire resistance rating has already been added to the interactive schedule. Okay, just to before I continue with this one, something that I've wanted to show you that might be worth mentioning. There was another property that we created here just for this training file. Okay, and if I explain to you the original problem was that we have many walls in this project because we have different sample files. Okay, we wanted to create the schedule that I just shown you, but we didn't want to include all the walls in the project or all the columns. We wanted to include in the schedule only a selection of columns, beams, slabs, and walls. In order to achieve that, we realized that creating a new property that we would give the name appearance in fire schedule, if the data type was a true-false statement, the only thing we had to do was to go and select those specific walls we wanted in the schedule and change that property to be appearance in fire schedule is true. So that's why this wall is displayed here, because the schedule settings indicate that we are scheduling everything in the project, but we're also filtering everything according to the property we created that says the appearance in fire schedule is checked. So that's why this list in our schedule is a very short list, even if we have a very, very long list of different walls and columns and beams. Just keep this in mind as well. If you want to, let's say that in ARCHICAD you're creating an option 1 and option 2 of different elements and for a single unified project, potentially you could create a property that will allow you to schedule separately the quantities of the option 1 of the project compared to the option 2 or things like that. So just think in a very creative way of using this properties tool. So now that we have the properties tool, I want to show you how we use that property to actually create um, an associated label that could show automatically that fire resistance rating. So we have here the instructions in the training file. We showed you last year in the upgrade training for version 19 how to create your own associated labels. Um, so we won't take too much time trying to explain how to use those associated labels, but we have the instructions how we got to create that label with the fire resistance rating property here. And here we have already set up the walls that I mentioned before that are already in the schedule. The fire resistance rating hasn't been assigned yet, but we've placed the labels. These labels indicate that none of the fire resistance ratings in these walls, columns, or beams have been assigned yet. So we will try to assign that. We know already that we can go to the settings of the wall and go and type the fire resistance rating, but that's not the point. We want to use the new feature to its full potential. So if we have the option to actually export the properties from the schedule, so either it's you editing the properties in an Excel spreadsheet, or it's the fire engineer that will be giving you all that information from an Excel spreadsheet, and you could bring that back into your ARCHICAD project just in a very automatic way. So what I wanted to show you here is that if we were in the option to go to File, Interoperability, External Element Properties, we can export the property values from schedule, and we choose what schedule, in this case the fire schedule, and we save that as a file, as an Excel spreadsheet. So if I show you, this is the Excel spreadsheet that was saved from ARCHICAD. What's interesting about the file we saved is that it comes with an extra column you didn't have in the original schedule. This column is the unique ID or GUID. This column is very important to map the information back to your ARCHICAD file. If you save a schedule, make sure that the same format that you that you got from ARCHICAD is going to be the same format when you try to import back the file. So let's say that we sent this to the fire engineer and we said, okay, you will have to add the information for the fire resistance rating of the walls according to the composite, and when you finished, send me back that Excel spreadsheet. So let's say that if that has happened already, I'm going to show you the other file. So this is the finished file in here. So we went through the Excel spreadsheet and we added that fire resistant rating, let's say. I think that some of them are wrong, but that's not the point. So in this case, we don't want to export, we already want to import that fire resistance rating. So this is our schedule, see how it looks at the moment. If I just go and interoperability, element properties, import property values into elements. So I just go and select the file that was already edited by the engineer, the fire engineer, and just go open, and you get this dialog box. Okay, if I get this dialog box, so what's the most important thing is that you have a checkbox here that will allow you to choose whether if you want to import that column or not. And you see in this case we have all this information that the fire resistant rating has been already assigned. So I will uncheck this box for combustible. I don't really care about this at the moment, just the fire resistance rating, and just set import. and the properties were successfully imported, and see that they are here already. So so what now? If I go now to the actual label, the list of labels, this is the same view we had before. Actually, if I go to the original one, the file schedule as an entry is the same view. So the labels were updated automatically when we added that extra information through the schedule, the interactive schedule. So just again, think of all the things you can use and do with the property manager. These properties can be displayed as well in the BIMX hypermodel. So if you wanted to add information to a specific element and you use the property manager as a tool to do that through the BIMX project, you could go and select that element and see that information. So you can see as well, obviously, the schedules in here. So we're almost done with property manager. Just to finish with this, okay, if you import an Excel spreadsheet that doesn't have the same file format, well, the same format of the columns as the original one, you might get a dialog boxes like this one, this exclamation mark showing you that this column is missing in the original one. So this column won't be imported because it was in the original schedule. And if you have columns that are duplicated, only one column will be imported. So in this case, this is showing this column was duplicated from another one, so that's why it's not being imported. Another important thing, if you're exporting, if you're importing properties from an Excel spreadsheet, it's always a good idea to save the report. The report will save an XML file that you can use as a reference to see what changes happened in my file when I imported these properties into the project. Okay, there's no undo button to when it comes to importing properties. So at least if you can get a good record of what you had before, you have as a reference that. Okay, and just to finish with this, something that I mentioned before, if you migrate an old file to ARCHICAD 20, you won't be able to see any properties in the list. So if you want to see properties in a migrated file, you have the option to import or export properties. You export the properties from the standard template file, let's say, and you import that into your migrated file or into your template file. Okay, now let's continue with the next new feature. So I'm going to go now to graphic overrides. Graphic overrides is also a new tool, or it's similar to favorites from the point of view that is a tool we used to have already, but just multiply that 100 times, and that's what we have with this new version of graphic overrides. So with graphic overrides, you have the option to override pen types. You can override line types. You can override fills. You can override surfaces according to very specific settings. Okay. If I show you here, this is just a screenshot, just comparing. If this was a project created in the standard template in ARCHICAD 20, if there's no overrides, this is how the plan would look like in the working drawing. If I apply one of the many overrides I have available, it could look like this one, just a simplified override. So just give you as a quick reference, the override is here in your quick options bar at the bottom. So the bar at the moment shows that there's no override. So you see no override in plan, and we actually have a simplified plan override in here. But just to explain very quickly what we used to have for override in previous versions. First of all, this is ARCHICAD 19 dialog box for the model view options. In the model view options in ARCHICAD 19, we used to have the option to override cut fields, drafting fields, cover fields, and zone fields. They could be overridden to either have no fill, or to show as a solid foreground, or to show as a solid background in this case. But there wasn't many more options after that. It was a very limited way to deal with graphic overrides. They were very global settings, so if I override the drafting fields in this elevation or in this plan view, all the other drafting fields will be overridden. So what we will try to achieve with the new feature is that you can override things according to more specific favorites without having to create an override that will change everything else in your plan. The renovation filters, the renovation override in ARCHICAD 15 to ARCHICAD 19 is pretty much the baby version, of how we used to deal with graphic override in previous versions. We could override, we were able to override element according to their renovation status. We could override existing elements to be gray, elements to be demolished to be yellow. We could override new elements to be red, and we know that we were capable as well to change those override pen colors or surface materials as well. We could have changed those things in previous versions. So if you're familiar with all the renovation filters and the way overrides work in previous versions, it's going to be very easy for you to deal with graphic overrides. So for now, just to clarify, we still have an override for the renovation filter, but we have now additionally the graphic override combination as its own tool. So if I show you the list of graphic overrides we have in here, the first one from the list from number 1 to number 15, this overrides try to explain in the easiest possible way when the overrides are going to be applied according to the kind of plan that you are creating. So you know that if you create a site plan, the override will be likely site. Or if you create an electrical plan, you will place the override to be electrical plan. But we have some other extra graphic overrides. We have 2D versus 3D, we have drafting, we have the simplified plan, we have a white model, and zones no fill. So we're going to explain this a little bit more as well. But for now, things you need to be aware of is we used to have the model view options. The model view options used to have the fill overrides under this list. It's no longer there, the overrides anymore. It's its own dialog box. So if I click take me there, it will open the graphic override combinations dialog box. You can open this same dialog box just by going to this little icon to the left of the overrides option here, and it opens the graphic override combinations. Or you can go to the menu. Document graphic override combinations, and in that case it opens the same dialog box. Okay, so when we open this dialog box, this is what I want to show you in this one. So how does the dialog box works? We have a list of combinations and we have a list of rules. The combinations are pretty much just the name of the filter you will be creating. Just think of as the graphic override tool as ARCHICAD's own Instagram. You know, in Instagram, you take the picture and you choose a filter if you want to, so you can make the photo look differently according to the filter. So this is what happens with graphic overrides. You create a filter to make lines to be displayed with a specific different color, or lines to look with a different line type, or the 3D view to be displayed with the different material. So this is when you create a combination. When you create a combination, the combination will be empty. It will have nothing. The combinations by themselves don't have any specific settings. The combinations are creating by adding rules, and it's the rules when it becomes important what you create for a rule and how many rules you want to add to a combination. So this dialog box pretty much explains that if you want to create a new combination, you just click the new button. To delete a combination, you just click the delete button. If you want to import or export combinations, you have this options here. And once that you create a combination, you give that combination a name. So now that I go from the combinations dialog box, there's this button here that says edit rules. When you go to edit rules, it opens this dialog box. The rules dialog box will allow you to see all the rules that are already in the project. Like for example, here at the top, the first thing you're going to find in the list of rules is the rules used for the renovation filters. So the existing elements are going to be gray, the elements to be demolished are going to be yellow, and the new elements are going to be red. Okay, so those are very easy to understand since we've had those options for quite a while already. But the interesting question is, what about all these rules that we didn't used to have? So most of the rules are easy to understand from the point of view that we wanted the ARCHICAD 20 standard template to look very similar to the way the previous versions looked like. We didn't want to make already ARCHICAD looks different, so we didn't want the template to look completely different. For this version, we made slight changes in the way the overrides work, but no major changes. So if I actually go to the graphic override combinations, or I can go to the graphic override rule, so it opens the rules dialog box. So something that I wanted to show you was this this combination that says 2D and 3D blue. So if I go back to a list of combinations, there's this 2D versus 3D. So this 2D versus 3D has two rules, the 2D red and the 3D blue. If I go to edit rules, the 2D red shows in here that an element type that is a 2D type selected from a list has been overridden to show a line in this pen number 58 with a fill type that is a foreground fill. In the foreground fill, it's overridden with this pink pen that is number 59. The 3D elements are going to be overridden as a blue color. So that's my combination. If I'm going to show you some of the other rules we created here, but just to give you a general idea of how this works, if you are familiar with the way the ARCHICAD interactive schedule works, it's going to be very easy for you to understand how this graphic override works. So in this case, we go to my list of element types and we see all the elements we have available. We can override elements and be very specific. So if you said, okay, maybe I wanted to override just a specific wall, so you would go and select the list of walls, and maybe you would say, okay, I want to override a wall that has this property. So one of the cool things about the new feature graphic override and the property manager is that you can combine them to achieve very interesting things, and we're going to see some of them very soon. So if I show you some of the other graphic override combinations we have this combination called structural plan. Okay, this combination structural plan that shows this 5 rules, and the rule says that the structural elements that are load bearing are going to be overridden with this red color. Elements that are non-load bearing are going to be overridden in this blue color, and elements that are undefined are going to be gray. Okay, so based on those rules that we have in here, we can understand now much better what I explained before about the walls and the IFC property structural function load bearing or non-load bearing. Now we understand that with the graphic override I can make them to be displayed in a different way in my plan view. So I'm going to try to apply some of this overrides we created. So if you're going to use the file as a reference, either as a PDF, you're going to have the option to download the file as a PDF or as an ARCHICAD PLN file. So all the instructions are here. So we pretty much go to the next view and we change the overrides in different ways. So I'm going to go to the next view. And when I go to the next view, I'm going to change the override. Instead of no override, I will apply the structural plan. So what happens when I apply the structural plan? Now I can see that these beams have already assigned a structural function to be load bearing, but the problem here is that nothing else in this plan has had assigned this structural property. So the problem here is that if I select this wall, let's say, okay, I actually wanted this to have a property, so structural function. So the structural function is non-load bearing. Okay, so automatically is overridden in this blue color, in this purple color, when the structural function is assigned. If I select this wall and I change this structural function to be actually load bearing and go OK, automatically is overridden with this red color. So you see that technically you could select many of those walls and actually assign the right property, and it will display it already correctly here in plan. So another graphic override that I wanted to show you is fire plan. So the fire plan property or combination shows that there is this property called fire zone. So these zones already placed in this project have already been assigned with either fire zone 1 or fire zone 2. When you have these two options, this is where you can potentially use this the same zone for different purposes. You know, if you want maybe you wanted to use the zones not just for a fire plan, but let's say that you wanted to use the zone to display the interior, the public area of the building uh, compared to the private area of the building. If that was the case, you could technically just go to the property manager, you create a new property that will be public or areas of the building, and will be two options, public or private. In that case, you go to the zones and you check what zone is private and um, which one is private and which one is public, and then you can create a graphic override that will show with different colors the different areas of the buildings, but you didn't have to actually create a new zone, or to assign or to create a new zone to achieve the same purpose. So just keep in mind those little things, because they can make things easier for you. If I go now and change this graphic override, I'm going to go now to the sketch plan. Okay, and this is an interesting one. This sketch plan is already loaded in the ARCHICAD 20 standard template, but what I'm going to show you is one of the things we consider to um, to create as an interesting graphic override in ARCHICAD 20. So this is what I've been showing in the last training sessions, and it seems some people find it interesting. So if I go to the sketch plan graphic override, I see that the only rule that we have here is that we are overriding the lines to be all a black pen line, and we are overriding all the fills to be background fill that happens to be transparent. Okay, that's a simple one. But what I wanted to show is that I created here a new graphic override rule. So I created a new graphic override rule, and I'm going to call that sketch line. And when I create this sketch line, I go and choose what elements do I want to override. I want to override everything. So it doesn't matter if it's 2D or 3D, or if it's a wall or a column. I want to override everything. But I want to override everything to have a different line type. So I want to change that line type from the straight solid line to be this line that is called the sketch line. So now I created that new rule, and just click OK. So the new rule has been created, but the combination doesn't have that rule yet. So what I have to do here is go to the Add button, and I can choose a rule from here. So I'm going to choose the sketch line. So when I just go OK, now you see what happens. So now everything here in my plan is displayed with this sketchy line. So maybe the scale isn't the best, so I change the scale. It makes it a little bit easier to understand. But something something as simple as saying, okay, I want this to be a solid line or a dashed line, or I want this element to be displayed with a dot, with a dotted line. You have those options now using graphic overrides. Okay, so just remember that the graphic overrides will be the way for you to make these changes without actually make changes to the settings of the element. Okay, you don't really want to select your wall composite and say, okay, I want my wall to have a different uncut line type. Why? Because maybe if there's a plan that you want it to look like sketch, let's say, that's fine, but your actually documentation, you don't want that wall to look like sketch. So it would be wrong to actually change the display of this the display of this wall here in the settings themselves. So that's why you create a filter that will allow you to change that just for a very specific view. Okay, so if I go to my next view, if I go to the elevation, there's something interesting we wanted to show you about the new standard template. And this is an elevation, but it doesn't have any override. When I actually assign the correct override, that it's going to be elevations, what happens? This vectorial fill, the vectorial fill that was showing us dirt or earth or soil, has been changed now to be a solid fill. So we were very lucky that just a few months ago, just before we started working with ARCHICAD 20 and the new standard template, someone was asking us how to deal with fills for sections, with fills for elevations, because yes, the section, it's fine that your section shows the vectorial fill for earth that looks like earth, but it's not right that it shows the same in your elevation. And the problem with in ARCHICAD 19 and older versions is that pretty much the only way to work around an issue like this was to go to the fill tool and actually draw a solid fill on top of the elevation, so on top of the soil. So if I show you the settings here, this override elevation has one rule, and the rule says that if an element happens to be a mesh, and that mesh happens to belong to the layer mesh existing or mesh proposed, then that element will be overridden with this fill, with this foreground fill that will be using a pen, pen number 1, that is a black pen. So in that case, that's what making this to be displayed in black. So if you customize your template, if you have your own customized layer system, and if you start to work with your own template using the ARCHICAD 20 standard template, just make sure that you go to the graphic override rules dialog box, and maybe you will try to make this rule to be a little bit more simple. So instead of overriding the side mesh using the side mesh proposed or the side mesh existing, you will change this to be the layer you used, or you will actually make it less specific and say, okay, I only want to override any mesh. It doesn't matter if it's in this layer or the other layer. Okay, so this is the elevation graphic override already in the ARCHICAD 20 standard template. Another thing that we wanted to show you here is, you see how this wall looks fine. This is concrete block wall, let's say, but when I change the graphic override to 2D versus 3D, what happens here is that we find out that actually this concrete block wall wasn't actually a wall in the first place. This is just a fill. This is just a solid, this is just a vectorial fill placed on top of the actual wall. So what happened here? So we can just think that perhaps the person that was working on this project, they needed to show, it was necessary to show this concrete block in the elevation. Maybe they didn't know that they could have gone to the surface settings, and they didn't know that in the surface settings they could assign a vectorial hatching, or maybe they knew that, but maybe they were lazy and they said, okay, that's fine, I'm just going to use the fill tool and I'm just going to place that in my elevation, and it's going to have the work done, and it's going to print fine, and it will publish fine, and no one will notice. and you know, I'm gonna have this job done. So that's true. It would have been fine. It would have looked fine in the documentation. But you know, if we make something that we are trying to push um, more and more and more, it happens. There's a lot more collaboration. Um, there's more exchanges of IFC files between different companies. So we try to model in 3D as many things as possible. We try to avoid creating 2D fields if they are not necessary. So this is a good example of an unnecessary fill in an elevation. So uh, just think of the graphic override option, so it can allow you um, to check your models. We actually had a pen set. There was a pen set released a couple of years ago in our website, mycadimage.com. I think that the pen set is still there to achieve a similar effect. But the problem there was to add a complete new pen set just to have a different display of documentation that wouldn't really be printed or published. So this is a lot easier. It's just an override. You can check your plans, you can check your elevations, and if I show you this again, so in here the elements that are only displayed as 2D types are going to be pink, and the elements that are actually 3D models are going to be displayed in blue. So in this case, we know that um, the the story marker is only 2D, and we know that this fill is only 2D. So just think of the practical way to apply this when you work with your projects, when you can check someone else's project and say like, oh, you see this fill shouldn't have to be drawn as a fill. This could have been just an actual 3D wall, or you could have done this in a much better way. So I'm sure you can create your own, even your own custom overrides that can check many things. But for now, this is the one loaded already in the ARCHICAD 20 template. Here in the training file, we have instructions how to create our own graphic override. So we pretty much go through opening the graphic override combination dialog box, and we create a new cardboard combination, and we add that combination a rule, and we add that rule to the combination. So that's what that's what we're going to do now. So I'm going to go back again, document graphic override combinations, or you could have opened it as well from this little button. I create a new combination, and I'm going to call this cardboard combination, and go OK. I'm going to go to the rules, and I click edit rules, and I will click to add a new rule, and this is going to be called cardboard rule. And go OK. So now that I created this cardboard rule, I'm just going to go and check, what do I want to override? Do I want to override walls? Do I want to override columns? Do I want to override beams? I want to override only 3D types. Just remember here that this is where you can be even more specific and say you want to override something according to an element classification, or maybe a layer, or maybe you want to override elements according to a property. So you can do that. So in this case, it's going to be simple. Element type is 3D types. I'm going to check this box. Surface. And now that I can choose a surface to override, I'm going to go and try to find the one called cardboard. So when I choose this one, cardboard, now I click OK, and I'm going to add to the combination the new rule, cardboard rule, and I'm going to hit OK. So now I have a new combination, cardboard combination. So I'm going to go to the next view, the 3D view. Let's see what happens. So this is the model without any combinations, but if I go and apply this cardboard combination, now I can actually see in 3D this this override made my 3D model to look like a scale model made out of cardboard. So this combination is not in the ARCHICAD 20 standard template, but as you can see, it's very easy to create. So if you want to achieve something similar, you can do that in a very easy way. There's actually another override that is actually in your standard template in ARCHICAD 20, and this is called the white model. So if I go to the next view, this 3D model has already applied the white model override. So this is actually in the ARCHICAD 20 standard template. So when you start a new project with the standard template and you go to the 3D view, you're possibly going to find the 3D view to be overridden to be just white. So if that's the case, you can always click the white model button and you can go to no override, and the 3D view is going to show with the actual materials or 3D surfaces in, as in 3D. Okay, so I can go back to 3D white model, or I can go and select the cardboard combination. So now this is how it looks like cardboard. But there's something that I really wanted to show you here. So something that we wanted to show you is, remember when I mentioned that in the property manager we created this property called construction progress, and we created a property called stages that had 5 stages and an undefined one. Well, what we did for this, just for this training file, we created also a graphic override combination that works with the overrides, so with the combination. So if I go here to my list of overrides, I see the combination for a stage 1, a combination for stage 2, 3, 4, and 5, and an undefined one. So if I show you now the first one, I will apply the combination stage 1. So what's happening here, the stage 1 combination is changing the 3D display of the elements that happen to be assigned as stage 1. So this is this site, the site is stage 1. So it's yellow and everything else is not displayed. But this is the interesting part. If I go to stage 2, okay, now there's the foundations display in purple, or stage 3, and there's this structure. But what I haven't shown you yet is that we are not using here a layer combination. I'm not turning on or turning off things according to the layers, because the problem here is, as you can see, here we have this wall. So the layer for the wall is just the same layer as we've always used, just this walls. So what happens if I go to stage 4? The stage 4 displays all the other walls that happen to be in the same layer, but they have different properties. In this case, the property for this wall is stage 4. So what's happening when we use this combinations, things haven't been turned on and turned off. They are only visible or invisible, and they are displayed with different color materials. So in this case, if I show you the combination for stage 2, the combination has this rule that says the element that is from stage 1 will be over in yellow, the element in the stage 2 it's going to be purple. But if I show you the rules, okay, the element type is all types and stage construction is stage 1 and is yellow. Cool. Stage 2 is purple or ultramarine. Okay, but what happens with this? What happens here? What is this extra rule? This rule is some extra rules were created here to say if the element is not of stage 1, it's going to be overridden with a material that is air. Air in ARCHICAD becomes invisible. So what we're doing here, we created 5 combinations that says if the element is not of the stage 1, will be invisible. If it's not of stage 2, will be invisible. If it's not of stage 3, will be invisible. So in this case, in the combinations, we just added the rule that was relevant for this combination. So in this case, if I go to as far as stage 4, it says element 1 is pink, is yellow, element 2 is purple, element 3 is blue, stage 4 is teal, and anything that is not from stage 4 will be invisible. So what I'm trying to explain here is that when we are working with combinations, the order you apply these rules is the same order that the rules will be applied in the model. Okay, if I actually place this stage NAT 4 at the top of the list, it would actually override the stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 elements to be invisible as well. But just because it's at the end of the list, it applies the other 4 overrides in the first place, and then the remaining parts apply that extra override. So in this case, only elements that are in stage number 5 and in the undefined stage have been made invisible. Okay, so now that I go to stage number 4 and stage number 5, and that seems like that's it. This is the 3D model representation that will show the construction process, in this case in 5 different stages. So the other interesting thing is if I apply the last override we created as a sample for this training file, is this override, this extra one, wouldn't really be used in our documentation. We wouldn't really use it for to explain this to the builder or to the client or anything. But this is good for us to understand that actually there's many elements in my 3D model that we didn't assign a construction stage, which is mostly fine for the car. I don't really care what's the construction stage of this element. It's just a car. It's not going to be part of the model. It's not going to be part of the real build. The bed doesn't matter. But what happens with this slab? Okay, this slab here, maybe this is something that is relevant. This is something that will be in your documentation, in your schedules, when you're quantifying, when you're creating a schedule to quantify the volume of concrete you're going to use in the stage number 1 or the stage number 2 of the build. In that case, that becomes relevant. So just because you went to the 3D view, now you understand very easily that we missed something to be in a specific stage. So in this case, I would just have to go there and try to select it, and just try to select it and change that to a different stage. Okay, so just think of the graphic overrides again in a way that you can change the display of things, or you can use that to check your model. Okay, so that's it with the graphic overrides for ARCHICAD 20. So we're going to continue now. With some of the other improvements for the tool. So for this part of the training, just to make it easier for you, um, we we have we created this file. You will be able to download this file and use it as a reference. So from this other improvements list, there's only going to be two things that I really want to show you. The other slides from this presentation are very easy to explain. So the first thing that I wanted to show you is this two-point perspective. If I go to my 3D view in here, you see the guidelines that show the guidelines actually attach or to the edges of this walls. So you see that the guideline goes in a perspective. So what we have in ARCHICAD 20 is a way so we can create a perspective just like a two-point perspective, like this one you used to draw with the ruler back in uni or back in school. So if you wanted to create a fixed 3D perspective, like a two-point perspective, it's very easy. Just right-click the empty space, and there's this option to go to two-point perspective, and you see how this angle is fixed. Now is 90 degrees. Now this looks much better, and you can use this as a two-point perspective. So the only reason I really wanted to show you this in this training session is exactly when you turn this into a two-point perspective, that is the moment when you have to actually save this view. Okay, that's when you go and right-click and go and save a view to redefine it, or save view to save as view if you want to save it as an additional one. Why? Because if I do something as simple as zooming out or zooming in, the perspective view will actually go to the real perspective, to the real camera perspective. So that's exactly what I said. Okay, you change that to two-point perspective and you save your view. Okay, another of the things that we wanted to show you here, just a few improvements with ARCHICAD 20. So you can change multiple stories at the same time. So if you go to the story settings, you can hold the shift key, select multiple stories, and change here the height in here, and all the other heights change at the same time. So you don't have to go and type one by one. Another thing that we wanted to show you is just a quick video for Rhino. This Rhino, for those who are not familiar with this, Rhino is a third-party program. It's not made by Graphical, but there's a connection called the Rhino and ARCHICAD connection. If you are a user of Rhino and Grasshopper to create parametric buildings, to create parametric parts of the buildings, you know that you can use Rhino and Grasshopper to create this 3D model. So this is not a new program. This has been around for quite a while, but the difference here is that now this Rhino connection allows you to make changes to make changes in Rhino, and to get those those changes automatically to your ARCHICAD file. So if that is the case, you don't have to save the files from Rhino to ARCHICAD. Actually, if I give you a reference, the guys from Patterson's here in Auckland when they started with the modeling the Lenlai Center a few years ago in ARCHICAD 15. There wasn't the shell tool yet, so they started this cladding with Rhino, and back then they were saving the files from Rhino and importing them as a 3ds files into ARCHICAD. So later on they actually moved on to newer ARCHICAD versions and they changed them to the shell tool. So with the shell tool it was possible to create this cladding, and I think it was in ARCHICAD 16 that we released the shell tool. But what I wanted to explain is that if they had created um, the the model in ARCHICAD 20, and if they had created that parametric cladding with with Grasshopper, they would have had the option to get automatically that 3D model in ARCHICAD without having to save out files. Okay. Just to finish with this other improvements, a few changes we have for CineRender. So CineRender has been upgraded to version 16. So when you open, the best preference will be if you have an ARCHICAD 19 file and you open it in ARCHICAD 20 and try to render the file with the same settings, you will possibly find, very likely, that it's faster to render and it looks a little bit more photorealistic. So this new rendering engine version 16 for CineRender has those improvements. Another changes here. We used to have the option to have the reflection and specular settings here. So now we have the reflectant settings. I think there's a typo. Sorry for that. So these are the new improvements with the ARCHICAD CineRender. Very easy to understand. I'm going to go now to the Cadimage tools and we'll explain some of the new features and changes to the Cadimage tools before we finish the training today. So very quickly with Cadimage and the Cadimage tools, all the icons have been redesigned. All the interface of all the Cadimage tools has been redesigned. So far we've had very good feedback. There's still possibly, as always, things to improve. There's things we can always make better, so we're gonna be looking forward to hear your feedback, and based on the feedback, you know that we make those changes to the tool. So based on some of that feedback, we change the Cadimage tool. So the icon for the door and window tool now is a 3D rendering, a 3D model of the icon. To be very specific about the changes, rather than just talking about if it looks better or not, is the important changes. We used to have the list of settings here. This is version 19, so if we were using the Cadimage door or window tool, we would have here the option to go to the door settings, to the glazing settings, to the door leaf settings, but it was using a lot of space in the dialog box. Now this text is gone. Now we have that extra space available to create bigger icons. So that has moved to a drop-down list. And if we go to that drop-down list, you can see that we can actually go from one setting to the other. So we can go to the glazing panels, we can go to the door leaf. From the door leaf, we can go to the specifics of the door leaf. The feedback, there's instant feedback when you go from one setting to the other, so there's no delay when you go from one setting to the other. It's very quick to go. Yeah, so if I show you this, so in the presentation file you can download, we have sort of explain what you can do, like select the store and open the settings and go to the door leaf settings, and this is where you can do that. If I go now and check the attributes, if I select this one, go to the attributes, so this is where I can change the materials, where I can change the pen, where I can change the fills of all my all the parts of this store at the same time, so I don't have to go setting by setting. Let's just go to the attribute, or you can change them here as well. So if I go to the door leaf settings, I can change the appearance here, or I can go to all the attributes. And just to continue with the window tool. So with door and window tool, this is where we can go to the IFC properties. Like always, we can just go down here and open the IFC properties. So in this case, something that's going to be interesting for you is that this IFC properties for doors and windows are already set up here in the element classification. So if you created a door with the window tool, you can actually change this element classification here, instead of being a door, to be a window. And if you create a schedule, or if you save this file as an IFC for collaboration, that's all you have to do. So you don't have to go to the IFC properties specifically, because you see when I change this element classification to window, the IFC type changes to window. If I change this back to be a door, it changes to be here a door. So just keep that in mind. If I go to the next one, so if I go here and open the settings, so this is the dialog box we used to have in ARCHICAD 19 to go to the glazing panels. Now in this version we can actually go here and we have this glazing bars in the same dialog box, so I can change this to none, can change this to vertical bars, so I don't necessarily have to go to a different dialog box. The icons, just to give you a quick idea about the design of the new user interface. If I select this window and I go to a mainframe settings, this is where I can choose. What's the frame depth, what's the frame width, and all those settings that we used to have as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 different little icons in 3 different pages in ARCHICAD 19. They have been unified to just one page with one little bigger icon that explained with A, B, C, D what settings are going to be changed in here. Okay, we have also the interactive icon. So if I select this window and open the settings, this is where I can change to double glazing. Now the image changes to double glazing or triple glazing, and changes to triple glazing. Now let's have a quick review of the Cadimage door and window schedule. So the Cadimage door and window schedule note, this is something that we released last year, but after we've been going through customer visit and we have realized that there's still many users that don't know about the existing of this schedule note. So I'm going to go and explain this very quickly. So if I go and these are the instructions here how to open the schedule note dialog box, but I will actually go here to my schedule. So if I go now to door and window and I go to schedule notes palette, I have this dialog box. There's no notes in here. If I select this one and I check the live edit option, I can say this is my custom door 1. Okay, and it assigns and shows that in here, but please always make sure that you click the option send the notes to the object. If you do that, it's going to be easier for you when you update the schedule, that the notes are going to be there. Another thing that I wanted to show you is that we can open from here the Schedule Notes Manager. So when I open the Schedule Notes Manager, this is here when I can create my note. I can create the categories, but if you already have a database, you can actually just import the database. So in this case, the training files that we will provide later today will include these files as well. So when I import this, this is just a sample list of some notes that could be used. So when I have this note in here, and see that we actually can create node sets. So when I create a node set, I can actually assign many I can assign many different nodes to just a set, so it's easier to apply a set to a specific door or a specific window. So now I imported all of those nodes as a database. This is very similar to the Cadimage Keynote tool. So if I select this door, I can actually just go and double click the node that I want to use, and I just go to send nodes to the project. If I select this one, and I just go to the option to double click just the set. If I double click that, all the set has been applied to the to this window. So in this case, I just go to the option send the note to the model. So now if the schedule is updated, the notes are still going to be there. So just keep this in mind. This can save you a lot of time creating and adding notes to your project, because now it's easier to get the note across different projects using this manager to import and export those notes. Another thing that we released last year, but you might not be aware of, is that now you can schedule with the Cadimage door and window according to a renovation status. So we have demolished, existing, and new. So you don't have to use an ID specifically for those different statuses. If you have a schedule for just the new windows in a renovation project, just make sure that you only check the new box, and that's going to be that. So if we go now to the Cadimage covering tool, this is the icon for the new covering tool in ARCHICAD 20. Something to clarify as well is that this this new version actually rename the covering presets to be covering styles. So it works in the same way it used to have, but now we are rebranding covering presets to covering styles. Okay, so menu Cadimage covering styles. This is the new UI for the ARCHICAD 20 covering tool. So if you see here, we used to have the menus here, extra text, now they're gone. We used to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different icons. Now they are just one icon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different pages. Now most of the settings in here are now part of just one page. If this screenshot shows a different cladding options with the new icons for version 20. So you see they're bigger icons, they are easier to understand. We have this A, B, C, D options, and you can enter that information. So if we were going to the covering tool, it would look like that. And this is the roof covering tool. This is the icon for the new roof covering tool. Again, just to understand very quickly how it looks like. So we used to have 3 different pages. Now it's just one page. We have this icon in here where you can just go to the drop-down list. You can change the framing. You can save as a style. You can change the fascia board, the gutters, all of those options. Much bigger icons, and you can change this to flat, to a ribbed, to shingles, or to tiles. Okay, so that's a new user interface. This is just a screenshot showing all those 6 different options I've shown you just before, but there's a very specific change that I really wanted to show you in this training, and this is that we have a new way to edit the roof coverings. If you select a covering and go to the menu Coverings, Edit Roof Edges, you get this dialog box. This dialog box can be resized. So if you remember, that dialog box used to be a very tiny dialog box in the ARCHICAD 19 settings. Now with this independent box, it's going to be easier for you to change the edges of the roof. So if I wanted to change this roof to a gutter to be none, I just select that here and I just apply that to be none. And that's it. Pretty much I just click OK and the edge changes to none. If I show you the next one, the next view, this is just here with some instructions how we can use this dialog box. So if I use the shift key, to select some of my roof coverings. You can select many of them at the same time. You go again to the Edit Roof Edges dialog box. In this case, it's easy. So you can select multiple edges at the same time, and you can change them from gutter to fascia to an apron or something. Or you can say to none. That's holding the shift key. If you want to select just one, just click over it or click in the other one and select it. If you want to select the perimeter, the easiest way is to use the magic wand in here. So if I use the magic wand, I just hover the cursor over the edge, and now this magic wand has selected the perimeter, so I can change this gutter to fascia, edge, or I can change this back to none, or to gutter, or say none. So we change this covering edges to none, and I just go OK. Now these coverings have changed. So it's really cool that the guys from Graphical gave the Cadimage team the chance to make this a different dialog box. In previous versions, it wasn't technically possible to have this extra dialog box working. So that's something that finally in ARCHICAD 20 we were allowed to do with ARCHICAD. Just to continue with the tools, this is the cabinet tool. Just like I mentioned today, again, this is the list of our Cadimage cabinet tool, just as just the regular library part. Later this Friday, in the newsletter, we're gonna release a list of cabinet favorites. So you don't have to start from scratch with your cabinets. There are going to be some cabinets there that you can go and create and use in your template. But for now, what I wanted to show you is this is where we go through the settings. So if we wanted to change the module to be a drawer, or to have drawers, or to have none, or to have none, this is where we change it. So drop down list in here, and this is the cabinet tool. The stair tool, we just wanted to show you here the huge difference between the little icon that we used to have for the height of the stair in ARCHICAD 19 compared to a scale, the same scale version of the drawing. So this is in ARCHICAD 20. The scale of the drawing, the size of the drawing is a lot bigger, so it goes from, used to be 45 pixels, now it's 135 pixels. So now it's easier to understand A, B, C, D, E, and you have all the options here to change the stairs. The railing tool as well, it used to be different user interface. Now it's easier to understand the user interface for the railing tool. And we're going to finish with this part with some keynotes. I know that not everyone uses the Cadimage keynote tool, but we're going to talk about BIMX at the end. So I'm going to ask you if you can stay a little bit longer with us. It's going to take just 5 minutes to explain the improvement for Keynote. So what I wanted to explain here is a tool we actually released about 9 months ago, but we haven't heard any feedback from anyone actually using this new feature. So we thought it's actually either works very well, so nobody asks about it, or nobody's using it because they don't know we have this new tool. So that's what I wanted to explain very quickly, this text case new feature. You know, we get a lot of feedback of people saying, I want ARCHICAD to work this way, I want this new feature, I want to achieve this when ARCHICAD. We make sure that all your feedback is sent to the guys in Graphisoft in the headquarters office. We make sure that all your suggestions are heard. Many of those suggestions are reflected in many of the new features in ARCHICAD 20, especially things like the way the tabs work and the way we can actually save views from the tabs. That's something that we asked Graphisoft last year based on your feedback. But in this case, this was something that I remember people asking about. Can we change in ARCHICAD the case of text? Can we change this to be lowercase or uppercase? So even if we send this feedback to Graphisoft, they haven't made this change for technical reasons at their side. But luckily, the developers of the Cadimage tools were able to add this functionality to the Cadimage Keynote tool. So in this case, when I go to the menu, Cadimage Keynote, and go to text case, I get this dialog box. So in this case, this is where I can go and choose whether if I want to make this lowercase or title case or uppercase. So I will just check this box, apply special cases. I will go to the import button, and in the sample files you're going to get later today, this is where I can load this one. So this is just a sample file, and this one based on our specifications, based on the keynote we use and the format. This is where we say, okay, we can use this way to exclude or to make exceptions of what things are going to be changed to uppercase or lowercase. So in this example, we say, okay, we don't want to change the millimeters text. We want millimeters to stay as lowercase. So we say the exception is if there's a text expression to be after a number, it will be an exception. If it's a text ends at S before a number, it will be an exception. If there's a JIP text at the start of a word, it will be an exception. So in this case, I apply those changes and I just say OK. And I'm going to go to my next view. So in the next view, these are already placed some labels here from my Keynote database loaded in this project. But if I go now to Keynote and I go to audit the labels, if I go to audit the labels, I see that some of these labels have to be changed. So if I select them from the list and I go repair, now you see that the text case has been changed. So now the text case has been changed in here as well. So an easy way to change all your schedules, all your labels, just go to audit and just go to update schedules after you make the changes with the text case. So just to finish with that, just remember that there's an option for you to go back and change this back to the original case, so in case you didn't like the results. Schedule notes, the schedule notes palette has been moved to be a different dialog box. So the Keynote palette looks the same, almost the same as 19, with the exceptions that we have new icons, and this little icon allows us to open the Keynote Manager. And just to finish with the Cadimage tools, there's a new dialog box to edit boundaries. If you remember, to create the boundaries from scratch, you used to go to the menu Cadimage Sites, and you go to Site Boundary editor. So now when I open this side boundary editor, if I select the boundary, automatically this boundaries should display in here. So now you can change the length, you can change the bearing of those boundaries without having to start from scratch. All the other functionalities remain the same. The new user interface, it looks different. So if I go to the settings of the boundary, it looks different, but the way it works is very familiar to what it used to be. So different here is if you have to start from scratch and this side boundary editor is empty, the only thing you have to do is to click the add new boundary edge to start drawing the first boundary. And again, at the end of the boundaries, you have the option to invert or to flip the direction. You have the option to finish the boundary or to close the boundaries. So this is the new dialog box. So we finished now with the Cadimage tools. Like I mentioned before, we're going to finish now with the hypermodels and BIMX. So things that we wanted to explain about the use of BIMX. So I'm going to go here and set the server. Okay, the use of BIMX is if you save a BIMX file from ARCHICAD 20, you don't have any longer the option to go to the menu File, Save as BIMX file. Okay, now if you want to publish a BIMX file, the only option will be to go to your publisher set, and you see then your publisher set, you have the option to go to the publishing properties and publish as a BIMX to upload the BIMX hypermodel, or you can go to the menu File, Publish BIMX hypermodel. But again, if you go to the 3D view, there's no longer the option to go File, Save as BIMX. And there's a reason, and there's a good reason for that. The reason is that now in ARCHICAD 20, you don't need to pay the BIMX hypermodel, the Pro version, in order to see the documentation of your project. Now with ARCHICAD 20, you can pretty much save the hypermodel, and if you have a mobile device, if you have an iPad or an iPhone, or an Android device, the free version of BIMX will allow you to see the documentation. So just to finish with this, we wanted to show you the Lenli Center, BIMX hypermodel. So this is the hypermodel created by Patterson. So what is the difference? What is the difference between the there's actually a Pro version of BIMX application for mobile devices, and what I wanted to clarify is that this Pro version has some other features that are not available in the free version. You possibly might have seen already one of the webinars we had possibly about a month ago that we explain all those differences. So I'm not going to go to the very specifics of all these different differences between the Pro version and the free version, but what I can see as the biggest difference is that the Pro version has the option here in the corner. Here in the corner we can actually see the measure option. So if I go here to the measure tool, I can actually just place the icon to place a measuring point here in the corner, and then I can place a measuring point here in the other corner, and now I see that the length of this roof is 26 meters. I can actually go to the next one and just go to the next one and just go and close the polygon, and I see that the length. So if you want to get a dimension based on your 3D model, you can get that with the Pro version. I can delete the dimensions and I can start here from the bottom. I can just see here that I see that the length or the height of the claddings of the land-lie center is about um, 13.5 meters. So this is the Pro version of the hypermodel. But remember that uh, with the free version, of hypermodels, you can actually get all this documentation as well. So that's what I see as the most valuable thing about BIMX, is that you can see and compare your 2D documentations from your layout and from your 3D model without having actually to run ARCHICAD. If you don't have ARCHICAD on your tablet, if you don't have ARCHICAD because one of your clients wants to see the BIMX hypermodel, because the builder wants to have the hypermodel instead of actually using paper, instead of actually having printed paper plans, they can just use the hypermodel. They can select, they can zoom in, they can zoom out, they can go to the different documentation, they can open that different documentation from there. I can go back to the 3D model, and just to finish the session today, we started the training talking about BIMX and talking about collaboration and IFC model. So what we can show you here as a reference, the guys from Patterson's, they created their architectural BIM model in ARCHICAD, but they were actually able to get the IFC files from the engineers. So the IFC files they got from the engineers, those IFC files were imported into ARCHICAD. Once that structural model was imported as an IFC into ARCHICAD, then they actually save this file from ARCHICAD as a BIMX hypermodel. So that's why you can see not just the architectural model but also the structural one. And now that we talked about the new features in ARCHICAD 20, the graphic overrides and the property manager. So what I wanted to show you here, this is exactly the same ARCHICAD file. This is the same BIMX file. It's not a different file. This one, we can see the new features of ARCHICAD 20 being applied in a single working model. So in this case, what happened here is the guys from Patterson's got the MEP model from the engineers as an IFC file. They put it into ARCHICAD. They published it as an hypermodel, but before that they created properties, and maybe the property was to say that there's a property that will be assigned to elements that are part of the MEP model, and there will be another property that will say this is not part of the MEP model. So after creating that property, maybe you could have created a new graphic override, and the graphic override would have been to say if the element is part of the MEP model, will be overridden with this teal color, and if the element is not part of the MEP model, it will be overridden with this crystal clear glass material. So you can actually see the context of the building with the BIMX hypermodel, and without having to turn off layers, without having to turn off the model, you can see all the MEP structure, but you can see as a transparent material all the other parts of the building. So these are pretty much all the new features of ARCHICAD 20 just applied in a new in a working file. So we finished with the presentation. thank you for staying here with me for 2 hours, almost 3 hours now. Hopefully you can find something that you can apply already in your projects with these new features. I'm going to recommend as well, you can go to YouTube, to the YouTube channel for the to the ARCHICAD channel. And the ARCHICAD channel in YouTube, you're going to find very specific and very short videos step by step to use graphic overrides, to use the property manager. So if you don't want to make a reference to this whole video, there's step-by-step very simple videos that will explain how to do that. Later today we will release this video as a YouTube video with the link, so you can go and use it as a reference as well if you want to. The files that we will release as well will include BIMX hypermodel version of this training file, and it will include as well a PDF version of this training file. And like I said before, in our newsletter on Friday, you will be able to go and use some of the new favorites we created for cabinets. So that's it for today. Thank you very much, and see you next year. Thanks. Oh, sorry, I forgot. If you have any feedback, please, you can send us an email to support@cadimagegroup.com. If you have any questions as well, you can send me an email to soto@cadimagegroup.com, and that's the way we can help you with new ARCHICAD 20. Hopefully you liked it. And, okay, so see you next year. Bye.